Psalm 40, verses 1 through 3. I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of my slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet on rock and gave me a firm place to stand. He put a new song in my mouth, a hymn of praise to our God. Many will see and fear the Lord and put their trust in him.
Sometimes the biggest thing that stands in the way between us and God's new thing is the old thing that we won't let go of. So many times we hold on to things and fear of letting go. And so that's what the title of today's sermon is titled, Fear of Letting Go. And so before we dive in today, we did honor the mothers, but I want to take another moment to acknowledge all the mothers here today. And this is a day that we celebrate the women in our lives who have given so much and sacrificed so much. I mean, I think about just my mom alone and the things that she sacrificed as I was, growing up. And now I see all the other moms who sacrifice things. And so we just want to honor you today. So whether you're a mom, you're a grandmother, a mother figure, or someone who's loved like a mom, we honor you here today. And for some, today it brings a mixture of joy and a mixture of grief for those who have lost a mother. I know many of you here have lost a mother at some point in your life. For those of you who may have longed to become a mother, or those of you mothers who just carry this quiet ache inside of you today, we see you, God sees you, and we're here for you, and we're praying for each and every one of you, and we're just so thankful. But it's so fitting that today we're talking about letting go, because I think this is something that mothers all know all too well, and they understand deeply. Letting go of control, letting go of children as they grow up, letting go of expectations sometimes. And so we see mothers, they just exemplify this in strong ways. But all through these moments, it's amazing because you see them you see them trusting God through it all. And so we know that it's not just mothers. All of us wrestle with holding on. All of us hold on too tightly to some things. We hold on to routines. We hold on to old identities in our past. We hold on to our fears or maybe our identities of who we are. And so even through all this, God is calling us to something new. So that's what we want to talk about today. So we hold on to things, to our routines or our identities or whatever it is. We hold on to things because of fear, but also because there's things that is familiar to us. Things is something that we've experienced, no matter how painful it is, or no matter how the pain that we experience through that. At least it is familiar. And so it's like the future, the next 5 minutes, the next 10 minutes, the next day or week or month or year, we don't know what's in store for us. So it's all uncertain. We don't know what is coming ahead, but we know what is behind. And so sometimes we hold on to things because it's familiar. And so we're gonna start with a couple verses in Isaiah 43, verse 18 and 19 this morning. And I'm also going to be quoting some scripture from other places from the Old Testament as well as the New Testament. But Isaiah 43, verse number 18, it says, "See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it?" That's verse number 19. Let's see. Is 18 on there, Brandon? It's wanting to skip past number 18. If not, it says, "Forget the former things, do not dwell on the past." And so during this time that Isaiah was penning this down to the Israelites, they were in exile. They were clinging to past miracles. They were clinging to former pain. As I said earlier, their pain was familiar. And so they were clinging onto those things. And so when God was saying here, forget the former things, He wasn't discounting their past pain. He wasn't discounting what they had went through, but He's telling them, you cannot move forward while you are looking backward. And so we find so much truth in that. We're going to see that throughout today's sermon. But this word dwell in Hebrew, it carries the meaning of inhabiting something. And we see Philippians chapter 3, verse 13. It's a very powerful verse, but it says, forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead. And so that's what we are called to do. And sometimes it's challenging. Sometimes it's hard to do that. And so we see and we know that fear sometimes disguises itself as wisdom. And so at first glance, fear and wisdom seem like opposites, but in real life, in reality, especially in spiritual decisions, fear can masquerade as caution. Fear can masquerade as logic or prudence, and it convinces us that staying put is wise when in reality it's just safe when we're not moving. We find a place that is comfortable. Instead of moving forward, we stay in that place, or we want to try to stay in that place because we think that we feel that it's safe. We say something like this, it's just not the right time. I think back in my life, how many times I've said or used that because I feared what might be, right? Because of what has happened. And so we say, it's just not the right time. Or maybe we try to rationalize and we say, I just need more confirmation. I need God to show me in this miraculous way. I mean, how many of us have ever prayed for God to just show us exactly what He's calling us to do? I mean, I think about how many times in my life that I have just said, God, it would be so easy if you would just send something, a clear something to show me exactly what I am supposed to do. I mean, and so we rationalize and say, I just need more confirmation. And sometimes we'll say something like, I'm waiting on God to show me. I'm waiting on God to show me. And then sometimes we justify. Sometimes we say, that's just not my personality. Or sometimes we say something like, well, that's just not my calling. Because we fear of letting go and we think that that is wisdom. And so it's very important for us to acknowledge that and understand that. And because often underneath the surface and underneath those phrases is the word fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of loss of the unknown, of stepping into something we have never done before. I mean, think about the Israelites at the edge of the promised land, and the 10 spies, they take the 10 spies and they send them in to the promised land to look and to see and to come back and report back to the Israelites what they have seen. And when the 10 spies come back, they say something like this, we can't go in. The giants, they're just too big. There's no way we could go in. And so they call it prudence, right? But God called it unbelief. They didn't believe. They saw these giants and they wanted to stop. So many times when you think about David, how many people before David, soldiers, had seen Goliath and said, there's no way we can conquer this giant. And here this little shepherd boy who people have just pushed out into the sheep fields to tend to the sheep, he steps up and says, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'm not afraid of this giant. I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen? I die. I mean, he was so in tune with God that it just didn't matter. And so we as we look through Scripture and as we get into today's sermon, we want to talk about God being immutable. He's unchanging in nature. God's nature doesn't change. His character doesn't change. God is God. But what we see throughout Scripture and what I want us to look at today is that sometimes God's methods and ways of doing things changes. It changes depending on who He's using at this specific moment or what the situation is. And so we see that God uses different methods. We see that in Malachi chapter 3, verse 6, He says, I, the Lord, do not change. So God doesn't change in who He is. God's promises do not change. If God says, I'm going to do something, He's going to do it. If He says, I'm not going to do something, He's not going to do it. Hebrews 13:8 says that Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, He's the same today, and He'll be the same forever. We know that. So this is comforting. As a believer and as a Christian, we can find comfort in the fact that God is immutable and that He is unchangeable. We can trust God because His love and His holiness and His justice and His mercy and His purposes never shift. They always stay at the core of who God is, because He's steady and He's secure, unlike so much that we experience every single day. I mean, just think about it for just a second. Sometimes it's hard for us to wrap our minds around who God is, because everything we do, everything we experience in life is ever changing. It's so fluid. It's constantly changing. You wake up today, it could be different. You're expecting something to happen, and it may never happen. And so things are constantly changing. So we get used to that. We get used to this loss, or we get used to holding on to these things, these routines or these traditions we're going to talk about here in just a second. But we get used to holding on to these things because we fear letting go of the past. And so we see that God's methods often change throughout Scripture. I mean, his character is constant. The way He works in different seasons and with different people, it varies. I mean, He freed the Israelites with plagues from Egypt. He parted the sea as they were going across so that they could get away from the Egyptians. But then He delivered Babylon through a pagan king's decree. We see Jesus, as we look at Jesus' life, we see that Jesus, He healed some by touching. He healed some by just speaking words. He healed one with mud and spit. So while God is the same, at the core of who God is, He doesn't change. But the things and the way He does things, it often changes depending on the situation, the people, or what the circumstance that is happening. So we know the early church was spread through persecution, through preaching, and even through miraculous visions. We've been going through the book of Acts on Wednesday nights, and that has been just a very good Bible study for those of you that have been attending. It's just been so good to come together, and we got people of all ages, youngsters to elderly people, that just contribute, and we all learn from each other. It's just been wonderful. But throughout history, throughout Scripture, we see the same God, but not the same methods. Many Christians, we cling to what God or how God has worked before, whether that's a certain experience or a certain worship style or a certain church season that maybe we were in, or maybe even a personal miracle, something that has happened in our past that God has really come through and brought you through those things. But the thing of it is sometimes when we cling to those past things, we miss this new thing that God is doing right now, just as He was saying in Isaiah 43:18, where He says, forget the former things, because I'm doing a new thing. I'm doing this new thing. Don't think on the things, the ways that I delivered you before, because right now I'm doing something new and you don't even see it because you're so stuck on what I did for you in the past. And so God doesn't change, but sometimes we have to. We know that, and we're not accustomed to change. Some of us like change better than others. It seems like every other month I'm moving our furniture at home, and Callie hates it. You know, maybe there's some of you here like that. Maybe you don't like for things to change, but I love change. I like to freshen things up. Even though it's the same things, it just looks different. It feels different. It just makes it look like an entire new space. And so I love change, but God doesn't change. But sometimes we have to change so we can follow where He's leading us. And so think of how a parent teaches a toddler to walk. I mean, it's careful. It's there's a lot of consideration that goes into helping a child walk, because you got to make sure the environment's good, right? You're not going to turn a child loose next to a river that's never walked before, because what happens if they stumble into the river? Or you try to make sure that when you're teaching a child that even the coffee table, that somebody's sitting close to the coffee table so that when they fall, because it's not if they fall, but when they fall, they can maybe help, not let it hit its head. And so it's very cautious. But as that child begins to age and get older and into the teenage years, the mother, the father, they begin to teach that child by letting it go and letting it make some decisions, whether those are good decisions or bad decisions. It's something that is absolutely essential for that development of that teenager to be able to make their own choices and to see that there are consequences to our choices and the things that we do. And so we know that just because a parent goes from extreme guard of their child from the time it's a baby to letting a child go and even make mistakes as an old age doesn't mean that parent's love has changed for that child. It just means that their methods are changing in order for that child to reach its full potential. And so the moment that we confuse God's unchanging nature with His evolving methods, we start idolizing the past instead of obeying God right here and right now in the present. And so we know that traditions can comfort us, right? We all have traditions that we hold on to because they comfort us. It's something that we've done from even birth. Traditions is something that we can cling to, and it's something that brings us back to 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago to something. And so traditions can be a good thing and they can comfort us, but traditions also can limit us. So our past can limit us. And so the past becomes bondage when we idolize it or when we let the past define who we are. I mean, think about this for just a second, and you can ask this question, but to yourself. But what memory or what mindset am I stuck in? Because sometimes that's a good question for us to ask, because sometimes we get stuck so far in the past that we're missing what God is doing here and now. And so write it down this week. Think about that and write it down this week. Pray over it. And if God is asking you to surrender it, then surrender it to Him. Because I believe by doing this, we create a space in our life for God to do new things, bigger things, better things in our life. Because when we let go, sometimes when we let go of things in the past, we are doing that because it no longer aligns with God's will for our life today. And so sometimes what God's will for you 20 years ago might not be what God's will is for you now. He may have accomplished that thing, but now He wants to accomplish something new in your life. And so you have to constantly be looking at that. I mean, another perfect example of someone in Scripture who had a hard time letting go was Lot's wife. As she left Sodom, as they were commanded to do, as she left Sodom, she looked back. And it's not just that she physically looked back, but it's this, she looked back longingly. Her heart was still in Sodom. That's where she wanted to be. She was so stuck in the past that she could not, for the life of her, move forward. And so what happened? She was turned into a pillar of salt. And so think about a time when you clung to something that was over. Maybe it was a relationship. Maybe it was a dream. Maybe it was a role, whatever it was. And then ask yourself, what was I afraid of losing? What was I afraid of losing in that moment? And then also ask the question of, how did it feel to consider giving that thing up? Sometimes that can be difficult, right? Sometimes it can be difficult moving on. So, we can ask the question like, what are we still looking back to? What am I still looking back to that God has already rescued me from? And that's a powerful question that really gets us thinking. But also God invites us to let go so that we can step forward. And in Isaiah 43:19, I think we do have this one on the screen. It says, "See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it?" You see, God's command isn't only to let go, but it's also to start seeing what He's doing right here and right now. And so the Hebrew word for new is shadesh, and it means fresh. It means never seen before. What God is doing now is something that they have never experienced in their life up to this point. And so you think about that for a second. You think about all the things that God had delivered the Israelites from at that moment. He used some really, really miraculous miracles. But God says, I am doing something now in this moment that no one has ever seen before. And if you're not careful, if you're so focused on the past, you're going to miss what I'm doing right here and now. So it's a very important thing. In Revelations 21, verse 5, He says, "Behold, I am making all things new." And that's something that we can hold to, right? God is making all things new. And so stepping into something new isn't the absence of fear. We know that. We have that fear of stepping into something that we don't know, but it's the presence of trust. It's stepping into something, even trusting God. So God's new thing, it often starts small and it starts invisible. And so faith, it involves faith, and faith involves perceiving the spiritual even when the physical is unchanged right here and now. So that is faith. And sometimes we say, like Thomas, I'll only believe, Jesus, if I can see for myself the wounds. I will only believe if I can stick my hand in your side where you were pierced. And so that's sometimes how our faith is. But faith is the absence of things that we can see. But it's the evidence of things that we hope for, right? 2 Corinthians 5:7 says we walk by faith, not by sight. And so our spiritual vision It must lead the way, even when our physical eyes can't yet perceive or see what God is doing right now and here. And so in verse number 19, see if we have the last part, we do. It says, I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. So when someone prays for healing and the diagnosis doesn't change, yet they still have peace, they still have hope, that's the faith perceiving the spiritual. When a church begins to prepare for growth and their seats are half empty, that's faith, right? When you're preparing for something that you haven't yet seen, that is what faith is. When a mom or a dad keeps praying for a child that has went wayward, despite no updates, despite no clear evidence that child is making any moves towards coming back to Christ, that's faith, because they're still trusting spiritual reality over the physical reality that in the moment, right here and now, this child isn't doing anything different. Matter of fact, it might seem that they're going the total opposite way, but you still have faith. You think about a seed. Jerry Gwynn, yesterday we had breakfast, biscuits and coffee over at the community garden and conversations. It was wonderful. But Jerry was sharing a story with us that several years ago, William Cable had given him some seeds for a tomato, and he was telling us about the Greer tomato. And he said that he had saved some seeds, and he was going through the freezer recently, and he found this pack of seeds from about 6 years ago. He estimated it. And so he planted those seeds. And guess what? Those seeds came up. And so he's got a lot of tomatoes. He said he had, I don't know how many, but he only had space for about 4, he said. But when we plant a seed, it takes faith. Right? If there's a possibility. I mean, if Jerry could have said, these seeds have been in my freezer for 6 years, they may not even be any good, but I've got faith anyways. I'm going to plant them and see if they come up. But imagine if the very next day after planting that seed, he went out there and just disturbed the soil and threw it in the trash and said, these seeds they're not any good anymore. Sometimes we have to wait. We have to trust that there's something happening beneath the surface that you and I can't even see right here and right now. And so when you plant that seed, you water it, you tend it, and you wait. Nothing happens at first, but then beneath that surface, that growth is happening. So faith doesn't deny reality. We know that. Faith does not deny reality, but it just refuses to be limited by the reality of what we are right here and right now. We have faith and we trust that God is going to do something new and something bigger and something better with whatever the situation is that we may be going through right now, or whatever the situation was that we went through in the past. And something that we can try that I think is very freeing is something that we call an open-handed prayer. It's something where you bow before God in a private space and you open your hands and you just ask God to help you. It's that opening your hands to receive it, even though you don't see it. That's faith. It's saying, God, I trust you even now, even though I can't see what you're doing. I trust that you're working. And so trusting God with what we cannot see, we read this scripture, there we find 2 promises anchored in this scripture right here. That God is creating direction in confusion, and He's creating refreshment in drought. And Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 and 6 is one of my favorite verses, but it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight. I love that wisdom in Proverbs. But wilderness throughout Scripture symbolizes testing and transformation in Scripture. And streams, it represents provision and life and restoration. And so this week, I want to encourage you to start your week by praying something like this. God, I trust you with the things that I can't see. That's faith. That's every single day you have the opportunity to sow a seed. You don't even know what the outcome is going to be. You don't even know what kind of seed or what kind of fruit is going to be produced by the seed every single day that you have the opportunity to plant. But every single day we should start our day saying, God, I don't know what today holds. I don't know what my week holds. I don't know what this particular situation that I'm facing or my family's facing. But God, I'm just going to trust you. And I'm going to have faith that you're working and that you're going to work things out for the good, regardless what it is. And so here's the thing. Trust isn't about understanding. We want to understand things so much. But trust isn't about understanding. It's about surrendering. It's like Jesus's prayer. We just got through Resurrection Week, and leading up to that, we preached on this in the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus wasn't weak by saying, Father, if there's any other way, let this cup pass from me. But he says, not my will, but yours. It's not weakness. It's Jesus modeling trust and surrender and what that truly looks like. God, I don't know what you're doing in this moment, in this, what I have experienced in the past or what I'm experiencing now, but I trust that you're doing it for a reason, and I just want to see what that reason is. And for me, for folks like me, I'm coming to a close. Folks like me, I'm so focused on the future that I forget the present. And something that God has been teaching me here lately is to not miss out on the process. Don't get so focused on the future that you miss out on the process of what God is doing in the middle. And that goes for the past as well, things that we've experienced and things that we've went through. Don't get so focused on that you miss out on the moment right now. And so today, maybe you're holding on to fear of the future like me. Maybe you're a mother that's holding tightly to your child's path, or maybe you're someone that's clinging to a season that's already passed, it's already gone. Whatever it is, I want you to hear God's whisper today in this scripture. Forget the former things. I'm doing something new. And so I just want to encourage you this week to go into this week encouraged, leaning in, planting seeds even when you don't know what the outcome is going to be, trusting that God is going to do a work that only He can do. Because we rely on God more than we realize, but so many times we want to control every area and every aspect of what's going on. And sometimes we go through things and we learn the hard truth, and the hard reality is there's a lot of things that's out of our control. So this week, as you stand to your feet, I want to encourage you to trust the Lord. In all your ways, acknowledge Him, and He will direct your path. So as we stand to our feet, if you have any need this morning, if you would like me to pray with you, if you'd like to know more about having a relationship with Jesus, I encourage you to come forth during our hymn of invitation.